Yeah.
About 100 feet out.
Roger.
Haven't broke anything yet.
Contact Subsistence Officer, permission, contact position.
Roger, for 1-3, clear contact.
اطلع فوق سنة صغيرة.
The one seaters were pretty good.
ثبت حلو قوي. قدام سنة. ثبت.
Back contact.
10 على 10.
This guy's real good.
ثبت الوضع ده. ارجع ورا سنة.
Single seaters I can control really easy.
Steady. Ready. Disconnect. Permission pre-contact.
Sure, clear pre-contact.
No. 3 is the permission action clear.
Killer 1,
3
check.
are clear.
Dark Star, Killer 1-1.
Killer 1-1, Dark Star, go.
Killer 1.
And our sure clear to contact.
Killer, Dark Star, call frequency change.
Dark Star, Killer 1-1, say again.
Call frequency change.
Yeah, 1-3 dispatch.
Killer 1-1, will go.
Roger, cleared observation line.
Let's have it. Right, you'll crack the camera.
Never said they were engaged, was the last I heard. We're targeted here. Splash 6,000. مسيتك دي راح ترحلك.
Yeah, go for it.
There's no audio.
There is audio, so you can still talk.
Never mind. This is really what I do about once every half hour.
We ready to go? Okay. Well, as you asked, observations about Bright Star 94. In the first place, it's important to understand this is the largest Bright Star of the 7 that we've conducted. It's an opportunity to expand in many areas, to include the expanded play by the Special Warfare Forces, expanded play by the Air Force, and we also had Marines coming ashore conducting amphibious landing and linking up with the Heavy Brigade from the 24th Division and conducting an attack. This exercise has been very important to the United States military because it gives us an opportunity to demonstrate our commitment to an important part of the world, an opportunity to work with one of our regional allies very closely and to show them how much we're interested in maintaining good military-to-military relations and being prepared for future contingencies and protect mutual interests in the area. We've had an opportunity to deploy a large headquarters and many heavy forces to the region, which exercises our strategic deployment capability. We've set up a major headquarters in the desert. We've integrated all services together. We've integrated all components of the Army together, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And we've conducted affiliation training with an important coalition partner, your FTX. One aspect that I'd like to expand on, the business of all components of the Army participating together here in Bright Star 94. In the first place, we could not put on this exercise without the reserve components. The Army forces that have been in Bright Star are from the Guard and the USAR. They have carried the major role in the logistics and support side. For example, the 377th TACOM from New Orleans is here overseeing the integration of all the logistics support. We've had the 143rd Transcom out of Orlando providing the port handling capability and the transportation to the maneuver area and to CAIRO West for the setup of the headquarters. We have the engineers, the 416th Engineer Command out of the Chicago area. The 244th Aviation has been providing the aviation support with their helicopters. The 335th Signal from Atlanta, Georgia has been primarily responsible for the setup and the communications, both the tactical and the strategic communication. 3rd PERSCOM, the Med Command out of Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm sure I've probably missed somebody, and I apologize for that, but it's an indicator of how important the reserve components are to an exercise like Bright Star, and we could not have done this exercise without them. In the same vein, it's very important training to the reserve components. It's one opportunity that they get to set up their entire command structure, to work with their down trace units, to integrate with other active and reserve component units and carry out what in many cases is the very same function that they would carry out in a live contingency or war. So it's been an important exercise from that point of view. We've had good maneuver on the part of the maneuver unit, the brigade from the 24th Division. Tremendous maneuver area, huge area by our standards, because we've had a large part of the northern desert to operate in and move over great distances. The ability of the Cav Squadron, for example, to range over the kinds of distances that a Cav Squadron would like to have to work with both its aerial scouts and its gunships and its ground reconnaissance elements. So it's a tremendous training opportunity. We've been able to link in with Marines on the northern side of the U.S. Army forces and with the Egyptian armor on the southern side, and practice all of our coordination and integration techniques that we would have to use in coalition warfare and joint warfare. The Air Force has had a terrific training opportunity. I think you're going to talk to the Air Force a little bit later on, but for the first time they've been able to deploy certain types of assets to an exercise of this type and get a great training opportunity out of it. We've had thus far a good chance to work with the Egyptian counterparts, to build close relations, to understand them better, their doctrine, their tactics, the ways we need to work together for coalition warfare. They've also had a chance to work with us and learn from us. So it's been a mutual sharing exercise. We've enjoyed being here. It's been very beneficial, and we look forward to coming back for Bright Star 96. What else?
Sure. You know, as Marines, we're expeditionary forces, and we always look for different beaches and different situations where we can conduct amphibious operations. Collaterally to that, we recognize that we're never going to do it alone. And so we're always looking for opportunities to do it with other services. And this was a good example of that, where we brought the 22nd MEU in, and they formed the flank of the 24th ID. And they've, from talking to Colonel Hewley, they've had some just exceptional training, not only individually, but as a unit in terms of their cross-boundary coordination. They were able to shift emphasis and support, and got some really fine training out of it.
Sir, on the training benefits, is this something normally the Marines would be able to do almost anywhere?
Oh, I think so. We've got Marines throughout the world. Just the Army has soldiers out the world, and I think that as we look at where they all are, they're also on Joint Task Force for the most part. And one of the interesting things about that is most of us have never had a chance to work with an Army headquarters this size. And so it's a real education from that to learn what a down trace unit is and how the Army draws on the various pieces of that to sustain itself and sustain the JTF in this case. I think the other aspect for us to learn is just how to deal with individuals. I've never worked with you before, haven't worked with the staff before, and different staffs work different ways, so you sort of have to learn what the protocols are and the strengths and the weaknesses and the experiences of all the different pieces of the staff. So you have to bring all that together. And then lastly, I think it's just we probably need to see this staff and others have more CPXs to work up crisis action planning and different aspects of JTFing, if you will, before they take on something like this. And I think that as in the case of the Pacific where I'm from, the SYNC structures about 2 to 3 CPXs a year, where the folks from the 7th Fleet, the 3rd MEF, I Corps, and 13th Air Force, each coming together to support the other JTF commander, and it rotates. And so as a result of that, everybody is familiar with the personalities, the protocols, the SOPs of the others, and it's a lot easier to be a JTF in that capacity.
Are there any other lessons learned that you'd like to draw from the working in the Central Command area of responsibility?
I think the lesson that I've seen is that no matter where you come from or what your experience is, as I've said, I've seen in the last week especially where we are really starting to pull together as a staff, as a JTF staff, and as a combined staff, because I've seen in the case of the C3IC instances of where all of a sudden there was a target in another boundary, and they cross-coordinated that, and the Egyptians fired because they had the artillery to hit these deep targets when the 24th ID didn't. As I said, I know there were some Cobras that were shifted from the 22 MEU into the 24th sector to take on targets, and I also know that collaterally the 24th helped the Egyptians out. And I've also seen where they were doing some very interesting boundary shifts with relatively short notice. And then when we look at the weather situation that came up and the requirement to backload the 22 MEU, the staff pulled together in a real short period of time and solved all the problems, from security to who was going to take on their zone, to boundary adjustments, to convoy escort, and to all the safety aspects of getting the MEU re-embarked. And so from all that point, I think that's sort of a graduation exercise, and I'm real proud of it.
Sir, is there anything you haven't discussed yet, or I haven't asked that you'd like to emphasize?
No, looking forward to working with 3rd Army again. Thank you.
Sir, if you care to share some observations on the major benefits we've had as operating as a joint task force over there, appreciate to hear them.
Exercise Bright Star has been an outstanding training event for the U.S. forces and for the Egyptian forces. The U.S. side, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Special Operating Forces, all working with their counterparts in Egypt, with the Egyptian military in order to accomplish a common objective, the two forces working together in harmony as a coalition to go against common training objectives.
Sir, how has it been working with the Egyptian forces from the, let's talk, for example, the Joint Exercise Control Group and the Friendly Forces Coordination Center? Make some comments on how that has worked during this exercise.
I think at all levels, from the individual soldier one-on-one with each other, sharing a rifle, sharing MREs, understanding each other on how they work and operate, their background and how they've been trained, all the way up to my level, where I have a counterpart as a commander of Joint Egyptian Task Force, he and I are become like brothers as we've exchanged things, as we talked about tactics and the operational level of war, how you supply troops, how you command and control troops. So the entire level has been a partnership, exchange of ideas and views and mutual training that's going on in everything we've had to do out here for the last 3 weeks.
Do you think our coalition partners have gotten good, valuable training experience out of the use of the Friendly Forces Coordination Center, for example?
Absolutely. The Friendly Forces Coordination Center has been the kind of the star of the show every night. My counterpart and I have gone into that arena as the joint and combined elements of the staff who've been working together. They brief us, and then mutually we've come up with a common decision by which what is best for our forces to work together to go against a common enemy. So that's a translation of what's been done during Desert Storm. We've used it here on this exercise, and it's just as effective.
Go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Capture a little bit more on the joint exercise control.
The Friendly Forces Coordination Center has worked extremely well with both Egyptian and U.S. officers working side by side on different issues that need to be resolved in order that the two commands can work together in harmony. So every night I've been meeting with my counterpart in that formal setting to receive briefings from our representatives on each of the functional areas, and then to determine mutually with each other those kind of actions that we must initiate commands to our individual forces so that together both forces are working in harmony as a coalition.
So would you care to make a comment on the experience of using the Joint Exercise Control Group, and perhaps the reason why we are operating with the Joint Exercise Control Group?
I think this is the first time we've ever used a Joint Exercise Control Group. And this is a not only joint, but it's also combined. What we're trying to do is in order to paint the picture for both of the joint task forces and to have some ability to control the maneuver and the air operations, as well as to provide some feedback as an after-action review items to the individual participants, whether it be platoons or companies or battalions or brigades or the division, on how the operation went today and what actually happened. So this combined Joint Exercise Control Group has really given ground truth and brought that into the different phases of the maneuver so that the commanders can understand what actually happened in the dust, the fog, the smoke of battle, and was the artillery that was called, would that have landed on the target, the air coordination for the helicopters to work across boundaries, would that really have been able to be accomplished safely without having any fratricide between our forces.
Based on the success and the innovations that we've had in this exercise, how do you look for Bright Star developing in the future?
2 years from now, there'll be another Bright Star. I've worked with my Egyptian counterpart. They're looking in other nations' participating forces. In fact, he and I are already working together on what should be the scope and magnitude of the coalition training, where the units are working closely together. What should be the scope and magnitude of the VFTX? He is also working with his national authorities to determine other maneuver boxes that would be available for conducting the joint and combined operations for the Bright Star 2 years from now.
Sir, is there anything that you haven't mentioned thus far that I haven't asked you that you'd like to emphasize as part of this?
I think every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, special operations soldier that came here achieved some great training and has made some great friends with our Egyptian coalition members, and we're prepared to work together at any time. Plus, it's been a great deployment for all of us.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Captain Gregory Cummings from Shaw Air Force Base, US CENTAF. I'm a civil engineer, and on behalf of the primary civil engineering planner, Captain Mitch Newell, I'd like to tell you a little bit about all of the planning and things that went on for the civil engineering effort for Bright Star. Many months of planning took place, coordination with host nation personnel and engineering personnel, as well as U.S. Army and the host unit, the 366 civil engineers. They were able to come together and make all of the facilities and utilities for Bright Star 94 happen. We used the Harvest Falcon assets for our primary utilities, as well as billeting and office space, and over 200 temper tents, along with 200 plus ECUs. Environmental control units were put up in support of this operation. A major effort considering water, electricity, as well as sanitation concerns went forth, not without some problems, but our motto of rigid flexibility, we were able to overcome all known requirements as well as most of the unknowns. Will we get an opportunity to show some of the, okay?
What has been your contact with the Egyptians? What kind of things have you had to do with them?
We're getting our potable water from a well that was put in through the exercise-related construction program using the reverse osmosis purification units that the Army has. That well is host nation supported just for this exercise, and all of our electricity is provided by the Army using their 750 kilowatt generators. Host nation support assisted with siting, as well as some facilities for the storage of bottled water and other exercise materials.
Problem areas that you might have had, sir, problems that you've run into and basically how you solved them?
Okay, some of the problem areas dealt with trying to get really our operations into the 20th century and copiers. We rented host nation copiers that required a special voltage, so we had to hook up separate generators and make those runs both for Army units and us. Other problems encountered during the exercise was getting the right number of assets here for the number of people that were participating in the exercise. We have over 2,000 personnel at the northern site and approximately 1,000 personnel at the southern site. And we had to house and feed and billet all of those personnel. So in coordination with services, the civil engineers have had their job cut out for them. 68 engineers plus some support from Red Horse and other units put this base camp together in approximately a week and a half, and they're ready to tear it down.
Any things that you find that you do differently, sir, after being here and doing this Bright Star for maybe the next Bright Star?
Well, there are always lessons learned, I feel. We would probably try to ensure that the assets that we're bringing in are identified a little earlier, get the civil engineers more involved in the planning factor of the actual host units once they're identified, and let them carry the ball. But for the most part, I'm extremely proud of the efforts that the engineers have put forward, and the can-do, will-do attitude really showed.
Base, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Okay, my name is Captain Ann Borgman. I'm the MWR and Services Officer at 9th Air Force and US CENTAF at Shaw Air Force Base, South Carolina. What I do here is I am on the AF4 staff, and I'm the MWR and Services Officer here. During the initial phases of the camp build-up and even pre-planning phase, I planned all the Air Force billeting, laundry, food service, and recreation activities, along with all the MWR and mortuary fair activities as well, for both here and at other locations throughout this country. Here in the Joint Task Force job, I'm the Subsistence Officer also, so I get to see it from the big picture on the Joint Task Force side as well.
Some of the difficulties you've run into since you've been here and your remedies to those sorts of situations?
Okay. Some of the difficulties I've run into are, it's a lot different than dealing with Saudi Arabia. We're used to in Saudi Arabia just getting in a truck and going around, driving our way around, rather than having to coordinate security, coordinate convoys. And that's taken a lot of extra time, a lot of extra effort. For example, when we did flight meals, which was the first time we've ever done this here in this environment, we had to order the subsistence, get it flown in from Germany, and get security arranged to go down to the commissary to pick up the food. That's the first time we've ever had to do anything like that. Lots of extra effort in all the movements around the country.
What kind of things have you done with the Army and the other services in joint environment?
Again, that's in the subsistence and the mortuary affairs side of the house. Subsistence-wise, we've coordinated to make sure that not only the Air Force has enough subsistence, but also the Army and the Air Force units throughout this country. The Marines are subsisting here, so that's not a problem, and special operations as well. Mortuary affairs side, I've got the history here. We're working with the Restore Hope mortuary affairs personnel to handle not only the Bright Star casualties and fatalities, but the Somalia and Restore Hope fatalities as well. So that was interesting, working with the 54th Graves Registration Unit, as well as the Restore Hope AMC personnel and the Army and CENTAF personnel.
And how about the Egyptians? Have you done anything with the Egyptians?
Mostly just coordination in the site set up here at CAIRO West and down at Beni Suef. We had to get clearances where to set up our dining halls, where to dump our trash, where to get our water from, and access to the bases in general. So we have done a little bit of drinking, and I've done quite a bit of tea drinking as well.
Some of the lessons, ma'am, that you've learned now that may apply to, say, Bright Star 96 when and if you do it? Some of the things that you would say?
Well, the next Bright Star, when we have the reservists, we have to have a definite core of knowledge there. They just can't all rotate in and out. That was one of the big gaps we had in our service support here for the laundry, for the food service operations, and for the field exchanges and MWR. If they have gaps when the unit rotates out, sometimes they had to shut down for a day or two an entire community service operation. And that causes a lot of, disgruntlement here for those of us who stay on, or those of us who now have to not go to the BX for a day because it's closed due to lack of manning. So that's one of the key lessons learned.
How about the people you've been working with here? How have they been?
It's been interesting with the 366, the composite wing. They're getting their first dose of dealing in Saudi Arabia and dealing with the desert environment. They've learned a lot of good lessons that I think that they can really use for the next deployments. Smarter on what people to send in for the Airborne teams, and just in general how to plan and how to do business. I think they've really benefited a lot from that. The Ellsworth and the Herbert folks down at the other location, they never deployed during Desert Storm, so they had to learn a lot about that too. They learned a lot about having multiple units work together, and that was pretty interesting for them too. Well, 96 will be the Air Force turn. We're going to do it pretty differently than the Army does. We're going to have a lot of dedicated equipment rather than having to do lots of workarounds that we've had to do here. Piecing together kitchens from Air Force assets and Army assets in order to make an outstanding kitchen. We've done two firsts here this time. Not only the flight meals, but we've also set up a flight line kitchen down here to serve the community, Fighter City community, and they send 1,000 Air Force people through that kitchen every day. And I don't know how they didn't do it in the past and how they could have supported the mission in the past without it.
And your overall opinion, how you feel about Bright Star, your personal?
It's a good learning experience. It's a lot of work for a couple of weeks. This is my third real-world deployment in the last 3 years. I've done Saudi Arabia, I've done Southern Watch, and now I'm over here for Bright Star. So it continues, it never ceases to amaze me that we're continuing to teach people about Harvest Falcon equipment, about Bright Star, about dealing in the sand. We thought everything was so publicized in the United States, but people are still learning a lot about what it means and how difficult it is to deploy over to the sand. So this is the best Bright Star yet. Next one will even be better.
He made cheap. So why are we doing it?
Yeah, do you have a postcard stamp?
Said they headed out to the side already. So that's probably about the next medium side.